Okay, here we are, War Room. Big game for the Danvers, we'll call it, maybe gaming group. And here we go. So we have some forces together in I-9. Well, the British fleet withdrew from M3, Mediterranean 3, and is still alive in I-2, as opposed to dead. But that did mean that we lost Egypt. We have a nice, strong force in the Middle East. And some planes. Oh, these planes were actually supposed to move here, people. And then, so then we have lots of planes there. We're building some down here, thinking about the future of the world. Here we go, and Japan did grow in China, but the Chinese were able to slip through and grab Peiping. Also, one intrepid Chinese, the 105th, moved into Russia. And it was a big battle in P-13, and the Allies got their butts kicked a little bit, but it was a pretty strong contest. And production, bombers coming at us. Look at those. No production in Australia. The American fleet is coming on its way. P2, P3, and then we have a resupply of the American fleet, and a resupply America's starting to think about moving out. In their first turn, they mostly grabbed and moved towards supporting London, A6. London was not in danger by any air force, though, so those air force landed in Karelia and Leningrad. The Russians were aggressive and grabbed Ukraine, but they failed to take Baltic states. So quite a game here. We got some men building up in Rome, as well as Berlin, as well as artillery in Poland, and artillery right on the front. That was bold. And then we have some Russian second wave coming from the east that landed in Volga. And that looks like to be the game. Turn one. Hey peeps, round two. Some unexpected things happen. There is what I call the pop the pimple strategy, and that is to crush the Middle East. I've done it myself. We've got a strong, robust ground force by the Japanese moving in. They did a raid on India, which reduced the garrison to just a couple that will be produced this turn, just momentarily. But 60 held back because there was a huge air raid on India. Huge naval battle in I-2 where he caught, in a pincer movement, and because he bid first, caught the British fleet here. Not as much casualties, but they did take down a battleship, which eventually would push the Japanese into first level of stress. And right there it is, just to let you know, America, Japan, and Great Britain pushed into the first level of stress. So there was a hard push down into Africa. Sudan and Egypt are firmly in the hands, and we have Italians in the water at MAM 5. But the British are putting up a good defense in the Middle East, and also producing, and will produce, and have a good half stack, more than half stack, in South Africa. The surprising moves up here, the Russians evacuated Ukraine and pushed into Belarus, and it was a hard-fought battle where only one tank held, and only one tank stood between those forces, those artillery, being captured by the Russians. Little mistake with the air forces, or I would have pushed in there and destroyed that. But unlikely that those forces would have survived. We do have the Russians all on the borders now. They were one turn away from the borders, but they are on the borders. Russians did grab Baltic states, and the Germans as well are ready to push back. The front is moved forward, though, so that's a good thing for the Allies. But again, their push has been into the Med, and it shows. So there's still a force over here. The Atlantic is in their hands, but there it is. The Germans have done transatlantic raiding to great effect, taking red, blue, and a yellow. Holding ground here. We did an air raid and a combo. So we used the air raid on the Baltic to combine. We're about to combine 17th and the 14th American Air Force. I'll separate those into a bomber command and a fighter command. And who knows where they're going to go next turn? Could it be Berlin? Probably, I don't know. So, wipe some things off the face of the earth. Over here in the Pacific, the Chinese surprised the Japanese by pushing through to Manchuria and capturing, contributing to that Japanese stress move. And Peiping is still contested. Everywhere else, except for in two areas, Burma and Iran, the Chinese are feeble, but they will get to produce this turn. There was a huge battle in P-13 where the Americans, against heavy odds, brought a large carrier force in. They were destroyed, but did a lot of destroying themselves, and then aggressively pushed into the Sea of Japan, and they're convoying that right now. Bravely, the British put into P-18 and P-17, and we'll see if they can land, because there's still a lot of Japanese boats in the water. So, and then over there in the Pacific, there seems to be a bit of a gap. There was a movement by some air to move into not Kamchatka, but Khabarovsky, and they'll have some what is that called? Power extension of power. Anybody help me out? Power projection onto Japan and the islands. All right, that is round two, eventful and exciting. And look at this, Guadalcanal held despite the British invasion to support the Americans, and the Americans died in a spectacular
I'm totally
failure.
sorry if I've had Burma the whole time. I apologize.
And then
That's like three.
there was Japan thought P-13 was going to be a fight, and I just stayed in P-1 and convoyed and sent some airplanes from 16 up here down to help us out. He sent the bombers down in P-13. So fog of war. His 44th was able to land in Indochina. And there was a pretty spectacular defeat of the British. It is still contested, but the British were defeated in their invasion of Thailand. The fleet over off I-1 is convoying successfully, but Egypt was recaptured by the English, despite their loss of most of the Horn of Africa and some of South Africa. There is a strong force in South Africa ready to duke it out. The Med is clear except for one newly built Italian boat. The Russians sent planes down to India, but there was no battle there, so they brought them back. There was an invasion, retaking of the Baltic states by the Germans. And then there was a large battle in Belarus that went the German way, although it's still contested. So the there was a brave charge to get ahead of the American invasion of Europe, but the subs were they weren't defeated, and they didn't defeat us. So if I'm able to get a ship up there, I'm going to be able to land those troops safely. And there's of course a lot of Allied shipping up there, so looks good for that. I did send some wild amphibious invasions. I got troops in A6, A7, and A12, and Daniel has troops ready to go in A90. So, and then we have a nice supply, a wave of American shipping that's going to assist in the destruction of the IJN. I think that is a good synopsis of what's going on. There was an air raid in Poland, and my forces there were able to wipe out quite a good number of troops. Surprisingly, Ukraine is still in Russian hands. Like I said, Africa doesn't look so good. Pop the pimple strategy is still in play, but taking a little longer than perhaps they had thought. All right, out. End of turn 3. Just no one's. So here we go. P16. We have an initiative by the British to invade from the south. So that's really cool. While the Americans still have that hold on the Sea of Japan, and the Japanese have built a navy, which I just noticed. Crap. And so China is finally almost dead. And I say almost dead because China is now over in Turkmen Uzbek. The Russians are holding India for the British, while the Japanese and Italians combine to convoy I-1. And we have a serious battle for Africa. Look at this. This is intense. Stacks down here. Aircraft. There was a blitz on B6 last turn. Got some troops in the water ready to keep this battle going. So hot and heavy in Africa. But we got some stuff. I did a shotgun approach to invasions. The Americans invaded from the north, the middle, and the south. 79 could touch down in Morocco. And we have a contested France as well as invasion forces off of either France or Morocco. 51 was able to get onto the land in Karelia. If I had been going into Finland or Norway, I would have been pinned, I think. But because I was going to Karelia, getting on those rails, I was able to get out. My 17 fighters completely missed any opposition. We're out to lunch, fog of war. And there was huge battles that thinned out the Eastern Front, one of them going to be in contested Baltic states and the other being a victory for the Russians in Belarus, while the Germans took back Ukraine and their oil dump there. So we have a fairly robust Eastern Front campaign. Got some waves of troops being built and waves of ships coming, and if you can see here, there's my ships in waves going off. I've got a bit of a gap in the waves. There's nobody in P3, which I usually try to have someone in West Coast, P3, Sea of Japan, but I don't. Here's the pegs. This is the end of the round. We haven't spent money yet. End of round 4, right? And I think that, oh, here's the stress chart. We have China and Germany up on the stress chart, level 2. And the rest of us, besides Italy, who is doing amazing in the labor and unrest. Anything else I missed, guys?
That's it, boss.
All right, can I get a picture of all of us?
Hey.
Little kind of selfie. Oh, okay, here we are live. Okay, there's the gentleman, and I'm going to say I was America.
I was Italy and Germany.
I was Japan. I was Great Britain.
I was China and Russia.
Very good. All right. That was a great game, and we will talk about whether we're going to continue next time from the Danvers game group.
Militarily or stress